Greetings, star travellers, and welcome to another episode of Astrology Now. I'm Cheryl Gottschall, and I'm joined by professional astrologer Babula Clement, here to guide us through the starlit labyrinth of this month's full moon in Capricorn. Today, Lady Luna climbs to her loftiest perch in the stoic sign of the mountain goat, and yes, she's wearing her most serious business suit, but don't let that fool you, because beneath Capricorn's cool exterior is a secret sorcerer who knows how to turn daydreams into concrete reality. Or at the very least, come with a detailed 5-year plan with bullet points and a backup spreadsheet. So this full moon will shine a light on where or how you've been chiseling away at your ambitions, and at the same time ask, when was the last time you gave your inner CEO a spa day? Because Capricorn may be all about discipline and structure, but even the goat needs a good massage and a moonlit soak in the cosmic hot tub now and then. So, light a candle, grab your crystal of choice, or your accountant, whichever feels right for you, and join us as we unravel the mysteries of this lunar summit while keeping your soul nourished. The mountain awaits, so let's go, Babula.
Great. I love that. Brilliantly said. That's fantastic. Yes, the mountain goat. My goodness. And of course, with a full moon in Capricorn, it means it's opposite the sun in Cancer, the sign of nourishment and self-care and so on and so on. So that beautiful balance, between, yes, the businesswoman, the businessman, the businesswoman, and climbing the mountain, whatever the mountain might be about, but how do we also take care of ourselves in that so that we're not burning out? And on that, I had a wonderful massage yesterday, so so I'm doing well.
Good, that's good.
Yeah. So the full moon's on July the 11th, and of course we're recording this a little bit before that, but I wanted to just, I think before we talk about the full moon, there's a couple of really important shifts that will be taking place. One of them is on the 5th of July, Neptune, the god of the seas and all things oceanic and cosmic and mystical and confusing, comes to a standstill in the sky. Planets, of course, don't change direction actually, but from our perception on Earth, it looks as though sometimes a planet moves forward and then appears to go backwards. There's a whole reason why that appears to be the case. But what's interesting is that it does have an impact on us. And so when a planet's changing direction, and these slow moving outer planets, when they're changing direction, either to turn retrograde or to go forward again, they're pretty much at a standstill, particularly slow moving Neptune, for about a week. If you look at the ephemeris day after day, you'll see it's just not moving.
Mm.
So it's stationary. And when these planets are stationary, their impact and their presence is very strong. It's like it's parked itself there and going, here I am, you will pay attention. And so Neptune, of course, has made its great historic move into Aries and has gotten to 2 degrees in 10 minutes and is now about to turn back and slowly move back towards Pisces once again. And it will return into Pisces in late October, but only for a short period. It only gets to the very last degree of Pisces. And then at the end of January, it will once again move into Aries and remain in Aries for 14 years. So I say all that to sort of really highlight the real significance of a slow-moving, powerful outer planet changing sign.
Mm.
It for Neptune, this only happens every 14 years, whereas the sun's changing sign every 4 weeks and the moon every 2.5 days,
Yes, yeah.
and Jupiter every 12 to 13 months. So Neptune spends a long time in a sign, and its energy is all about dissolving and dissolution and things falling away and seeming to disappear. And it's like when Neptune's strong as it is right now, it feels like we can't quite get a grip. You can't quite get a handle. You can't even name necessarily what it is you're experiencing. It feels very nebulous and I don't know what's going on. And so often we feel a bit confused, a bit all over the place, a little bit chaotic. I mean, life is pretty quite chaotic on planet Earth these days. And also with Neptune, we can often just feel um, a bit tired, and that feeling of, oh, I'm just over it. I can't. It can feel harder to function in a really practical sort of a way.
Yes, it's not terribly grounded.
No, that's right. And I think our tolerance for pressure
Mm,
is not very strong when Neptune is active, either in the collective field as it is right now, or in our own individual chart if we're having our own personal Neptune transit.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, we can wax lyrical about how beautiful and romantic and mystical and poetic Neptune is, and it is, but it's also, in reality, not a particularly easy energy.
Mm,
And then when you couple that with the fact that about 10 or so days later, Saturn, which is traveling so closely with Neptune now, is also going to turn retrograde at nearly 2 degrees.
mm,
They're literally minutes apart from each other in the sky on the 13th of July. So that combination of Saturn and Neptune dancing very, very close together and both coming to a standstill and moving back. And they'll be making their way back into Pisces for a period of time. It's even hard to even speak to, people say, what does that mean? And like, well, how long have we got? Because it can mean so many things and you can't really speak it in a sentence.
no, it's very hard to pin it down, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's slippery. It's
yeah,
it's a little bit chameleon-like too,
yeah.
very much so. So yeah, I sometimes struggle with that as well because I like clarity. My Saturn on my Sun likes, likes things to be real. It likes it to be direct, real world, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Clear and definite, and that's right. And that's just not how things are with Neptune. Of course, Saturn is with Neptune. So, as you said, Saturn likes things to be straightforward, clear. There's evidence. I can see it. I get it. It's tangible. And that planet of, the nitty gritty, earthy experience, Saturn,
Mm,
and Saturn can feel like a bit of a downer sometimes is sitting there with mystical Neptune that just wants to transcend into the heavenly realms, of bliss and
mm,
union and that sort of space. But at the same time, we're dealing with pretty heavy nitty gritty stuff. So it's very contradictory. It's quite confusing actually and
yeah.
disorienting.
I've found it really hard to understand how those two, what happens when those two are together, because Saturn's all about structures and borders and, walls, and Neptune, like, it wants to pull them down, it wants to dissolve them. We don't want that. Like, it's just this real push pull, like, and it's like this constant building of something and then completely, just
That's right.
destructing it. And it's like,
Yeah.
you can't get a hold of things because
Yeah.
it's just constantly changing.
Yeah. And remember, Saturn's been going through Pisces for the last 18 months, which is a sign that's ruled by Neptune. So already Saturn's been sort of drenched in this, in the waters of Pisces. Saturn. And what is it that will wear down rock? Water.
Yeah. Mm,
Like a cliff face at the edge of an ocean. Over time, that cliff face will just gradually get worn down and worn down and worn down and worn down by the power of the water. So it's this sense, and that feeling of being worn down, I think is something that many of us are experiencing. There's been so much going on for the last 5 years in our personal lives and in the world that we can have times when we just feel worn down
yeah.
by it all. And it's because those all, and it's interesting historically, whenever there's been Saturn Neptune conjunctions with, if my memory serves me, it's roughly around every 37 years. Apologies if I haven't got that right. I think that's right. There is in the world evidence of worldly structures in a very real way just suddenly collapsing,
Mm.
because of the Neptune influence.
So, so Neptune is more powerful than Saturn, though. If
You
you,
could say that those three outer planets out beyond Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto,
mm,
Saturn does his best to keep it together, but they're very powerful cosmic forces
mm,
of evolution, and you can't hold back the tides of evolution.
yes, true.
Evolution of consciousness, actually.
Yes,
So Saturn serves us very well on a human level. I mean, in the body, it's our bones, it's a structure
yeah.
and systems, and in the world, it's our too. And we need certain structures and systems in order for humanity to sort of operate together.
Mm,
But at the same time, those systems become hard and rigid and unbending.
mm,
And Saturn I mean, sorry, Neptune is fluid. It rules Pisces. It's just fluid. Everything is fluid. So how these systems and structures, they need to loosen up. They need to let go of their tight grip. It's
mm,
like that. I feel that's the conjunction of these two planets.
mm.
And it's not easy. So we can all be feeling like, my God, I thought I had this together and now it's all falling away or falling apart.
Yes, yeah,
So it is a big story, and it's one of the main themes of the whole of July. And isn't it interesting that the full moon's in Capricorn, the sign that's ruled by Saturn?
yes, yeah. We'll dig into that.
Yeah, and of course the full moon's in Capricorn, so it's opposite Cancer, a water sign like Pisces and Neptune, and even in esoteric astrology, which is based on the knowledge of the seven rays, they say that Neptune esoterically actually rules Cancer.
Mm,
So again, we've got this reflection of Saturn, Neptune, Capricorn, Cancer on this full moon.
yeah.
The mystical waters, and then the reality, the meat and potatoes reality stuff of Saturn, Capricorn.
Mm, mm.
Saturn's about our responsibilities, isn't it? Our earthly responsibilities, things that we simply just have to take care of and deal with.
I think too, with the moon in there, with the full moon in Capricorn, there could be, I mean, Capricorn's a masculine sign anyway. Yeah, yep, sign. So there's,
Capricorn's actually a feminine sign because it's Earth.
oh, sorry, I got that wrong. I meant to say
That,
that.
that's okay. It can feel masculine. I
Yes,
understand people
yeah,
often feel like it must be masculine.
yeah. So maybe with the moon there, there's something around emotional maturity, do you think?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
Capricorn is about growing up, basically.
it is.
Maturation, coming to adulthood and being responsible and all those sorts of things. And with the moon there, it could be about our emotions.
Yes, and often Capricorn people, unless they have a lot of water in their chart, expressing emotions isn't their natural response and way of dealing things. They won't outwardly show you a lot of emotional vulnerability. It's
Yeah.
not an easy thing for Capricorn because they're more um, built, if you like, to get on with the task and to accomplish whatever mission or goal or purpose they feel they're here to do. And
Mm.
they don't really have a lot of time for all that other stuff. So the opposite sign of Cancer is dealing with the more emotional, personal side of life.
Yeah. So there's this sort of um, issues or whatever about cancer is our worldly self, our public self, our business self, goal-oriented self. Did I say cancer? I meant Capricorn.
Yeah, Capricorn.
Sorry.
So I
How
think
easy,
Neptune's got a hold. It's very
how
like
easy to
Neptune. We just
get these things all messed up sometimes. Um, and opposite that nurturing private cancer. So,
yeah.
it's we could find our public life at odds with our private life. And that could I think that could play out in you know, I'm the person who's bringing in the money, the breadwinner, but issues around, well, I also want to be there for my family, be at home, spend time
Yeah.
with them, those sorts of things. So I'm trying to think about, the day-to-day issues that can arise.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's a real theme with this particular polarity of signs, Cancer, Capricorn, that balance between, achieving and accomplishing worldly goals and ambitions,
Mm,
but also not at the expense of your home life and your family and your children and so on. And we see that happen.
yeah.
And it can be quite a struggle for people with planets in both of these signs, in oppositions in their own chart, and to work through those issues so that they do find some kind of a balance.
And I think that, I find Capricorns Capricorn energy anyway, because no one's just a Capricorn. They're quite happy to work hard, and
Yeah,
can become obsessed with work. Uh,
yeah,
one of my family members, he used to work for the government many years ago when after high school, and he would get in there at like, 6:30 in the office. But he's a Capricorn, and he would work and work and work and work and work, and then he would sit around and be bored for the rest of the day, So
crazy, isn't it?
you just get in there and work, and he's always about work, So it's like,
Yeah,
oh, get a life too,
and
you know?
yeah, I know, and it's a cardinal sign, so there's a lot of drive, but it's an earth, cardinal earth, so there's this drive to accomplish in that very earthy way, isn't it? And often the Capricorn from a very young age is already looking ahead, which is very cardinal, to where they want to be in 5 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's the mountain goat climbing a mountain. Their sight is set up there. And that can be true for the more spiritually oriented Capricorn as well. Their goals might be of a more spiritual nature. So they put a lot of effort and work and discipline
Mm,
into the project, whatever it might be, or the mission, whether it's a worldly one or a spiritual one, totally focused on that end goal.
yeah.
Um, and Cancer, it could be, a couple with a family, and one's always about the career, the business, all of that, and the other one's at home holding it together at home, and they can work that out in a way that's beautifully balanced and harmonized,
Mm.
and in full agreement, or it can cause a lot of difficulty.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed about Capricorn too, it wants to achieve, but it wants to be appreciated for what it achieves. It doesn't need accolades, but it just wants appreciation.
Like recognition.
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It rules naturally the 10th house, doesn't it? Which is the house of public position and status and career path and so on.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
But on an inner level too, Capricorn's very much about initiation through trials and tribulations to achieve the next level. But
mm,
to go and they Capricorns often do it very tough. So even on this Capricorn full moon, we might be presented with some challenges,
mm,
that we just have to knuckle down and get on with it, whether that's at home or in our work or with health, whatever it might be. That will often depend on where Capricorn sits in your chart,
mm.
what house that is. So there might be challenges that present themselves that we simply have to put aside other things and just deal with what's happening right here. That's very Saturn Capricorn.
Yes.
So, well, we haven't even really fully got to the full, because there's something else I wanted to talk about before the full moon happens. It's super important. And that is that on the 7th of July, by the time people hear this, pardon me, Uranus. So not only have we got Saturn and Neptune doing this retrograde to go back into Pisces, Uranus will have left Taurus, where it's been now for 7 years,
Mm,
and will put his first steps into the sign of Gemini.
yeah.
So there's another really important energetic shift. And Uranus will be in Gemini for a few months and till the 8th of November, go back into Taurus, only gets to 27, and then in April next year back into Gemini and stay there for 7 years. So we're now in this period between now and April where Uranus is doing this crossing over into Gemini, back into Taurus, then into Gemini and staying there. So, if we're following astrology at all, we get to track these things. We get to, on a day like that, Uranus, which by the way loves being in Gemini, they have such an affinity for each other. It's going to be very interesting to
Mm.
actually pay attention and notice and observe what we're feeling, what we're experiencing energetically, what's going on in our life, what's going on in the world on the very day that Uranus leaves Taurus, where it's been creating havoc and mayhem and change and upheaval in all the Taurian issues, money, finances, land, agriculture, food production, security itself, and goes into Gemini, the sign of the mind and communication.
Yeah, I was finding it really interesting. Excuse me. I was listening to an astrologer the other day who pointed out that when Uranus was in Taurus, we had innovation that promotes individualism. So we had that rise of things like Airbnb, Uber Eats home delivery services, that sort of thing. Of course, we had massive housing grabs and, like you said, protests by farmers, etc.
Yes.
We're being squeezed out by big business. Um, and it just struck me how these themes are so accurate in astrology, aren't they? They're big themes, yeah, and the things that can emerge. So when Uranus goes into Gemini, Uranus, the planet of individuality and innovation, we're going to have things like breaking free from conventional thought,
Yeah.
or thought patterns, I suppose, awaken our mind to new perspectives. Also, because Gemini is so adaptable. So it's like we embrace the art of adaptability, because there's going to be a whole lot of stuff going on.
There sure is, and it's going to move really fast. Geminis, or people with quite a bit of Gemini in their chart, um, they're quick.
Mm,
Everything's really quick. It's mutable air. So think of how light air is, and mutability means it's always moving and changing. And then we've got Uranus, the planet of change and upheaval and chaos and disruption, moving into this mutable air sign. It's like suddenly the energy, because when Uranus went into Taurus and in those few years, the way I was seeing it, like as a metaphor, I was seeing it like bolts of lightning coming down from the sky, which is Uranus, through a tree, Taurus, and into the ground, electrifying the ground and bringing that energy of change. But this is all up in the air.
mm,
Like, and the words that come to me when I say that is like, look up, look, because there's going to be a lot energetically going on just in the space, in the air and in space and in the sky and in our mind. Like our mental energy is going to be just, I don't even know what the word is, but it's going to be so supercharged
yeah.
because Uranus is electrical and Mercury, which rules Gemini, is the nervous system. So all the electrical pathways through it, the nervous systems of our bodies and our brain and our chakras and our auric field, like going to be lit up like Christmas trees, which might be amazing, but it can also be very destabilizing.
Blow a circuit.
Blow a circuit.
Yes, but I was thinking the mind is going to sort of wander into uncharted territory. So we're going to have these sort of, like these breakthroughs in ideas. And I don't know, I just see it like popping a bottle of champagne with all the things,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. And I think we'll find ourselves saying things like, oh, I never thought about it like that before.
Exactly.
Someone will say something, a completely different perspective, and it just completely shifts your own thinking pattern. So
Yeah,
our thinking patterns are now, well established ways of thinking and seeing things and even speaking, even our speech is likely to change.
yeah,
I mean, we've also got AI, of course, technology coming into the field of Gemini, which is everything to do with communication, language, words, speech, the media, everywhere.
Mm,
Um, all of a sudden AI is just sort of infiltrating everything, and that's not going to stop, whether we like it or not.
yeah.
So there's all of that. There'll be a lot of rapid communication technology changes, even things like transport. Gemini's have got a lot to do with movement, transport, just, cars and trucks on the road and getting things from here to there. And yes, just so much movement and change, and it will be quite rapid. Um, Uranus, when it was discovered in 1781, was actually discovered in the sign of Gemini.
Mm,
And Uranus, we often say, is the higher octave of Mercury, and Mercury is the ruling planet of Gemini. So Uranus has a very strong affinity with this sign. And I think it's going to, for many people with strong Gemini um, energies and signatures in their chart, as you do, and it's my midheaven, um, it's just going to like light bulbs in going off in this sign, because Gemini is the sign of the messenger. It's the storyteller as well. And because it's a sign of twins, it's very dual. It's, well, one minute you say this and the next minute you're saying the opposite, because all of a sudden your mind's seeing the opposite thing.
mm.
It's going to be extremely interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the ability of Gemini, isn't it? Because it has the ability to hold opposing thoughts at the same time. Um,
Yeah,
and I was also thinking, I hope I haven't lost track now, but I was also thinking about, we just talked about this before we started recording, that Uranus and Gemini will trine Pluto in Aquarius as well. So there's going to be huge revelations about the cosmos and extraterrestrial life in the universe. I think that's going to blow some people's minds. They're going to, what?
definitely.
And I think they're going to feel like, start to think that we're living in a sci-fi movie because this can't be true.
I know, that's exactly right. And those trines from Uranus in Gemini, which you've already said is very strong in Gemini, trine to Pluto in Aquarius, and Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. And Uranus, Aquarius is there, Gemini is there, Uranus is sky god.
Mm,
Yes, Pluto is the lord of the underworld.
mm,
Very interesting combination, but those trines are really going to open up huge channels of information, of communication, and as you say, including um, I don't even know what the right language is anymore, ETs. I
yeah.
just like to call them out brothers and sisters from other star nations, who are amongst us. And are very, very likely in these next few years, as that trine between Uranus and Pluto continues to develop over the next 3 to 4 years,
Mm,
that's going to be a super interesting thing. But it will also include bringing up the shadow side of all this information technology.
mm, yeah.
That will be part of it. But yeah, it's going to be,
Wild.
but wild, and so many revelations, I think, and things being revealed and exposed through various information channels, and just through our own thinking and our own mind and our own mind's capacity to take on board new ideas. And if we're going to hold rigidly to an old way of thinking about things, that's not going to be very helpful.
Mm, mm, mm. Yes.
Yeah,
There's always a downside to everything, isn't there? I think I was reading that the last time Uranus was in Gemini was the end of World War II, or the ending
yeah,
of World War II, which didn't end very well for those people involved in the explosion.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So there's always a shadow side to these things. And remember, Gemini is a sign of duality,
Mm,
and Pluto is in Aquarius, of course. So, but a fascinating, fascinating time to be alive. And I think, if we're understanding, of course, that we're in a rapidly moving evolutionary process of the awakening of humanity, this is these changes of these planets, Uranus going into Gemini, then and fully next year, Neptune and Saturn going into Aries.
mm,
and Pluto having just gone into Aquarius last year, all happening within 2, 3 years of each other, are all signatures of rapid evolutionary awakening processes.
Mm.
And sometimes, I know in my own life, sometimes I only really shift and have another level of awakening when I face something that I haven't wanted to face up until that point.
Mm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, we like often we just don't want to know about something because it's, you just don't want to know about that because it doesn't fit our current thinking paradigm. But then when we're finally ready to face the truth about something, even if it's really unpleasant and ugly, even, that will often facilitate then a rapid
Yeah.
period of spiritual growth.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
where we break out of something and our consciousness is now free to expand and open up to another level, you know.
Mm.
So it's big, it's difficult, it's challenging, it's exciting, it's beautiful, it's awful, it's all of that.
Yes. Don't ask.
Yeah, don't ask what does that mean because you
It's
know,
everything.
we just, yeah. So yes, so the full moon on the 11th. Um, do we need to say any more about that? I think we've spoken about that quite a lot, haven't we?
I've got in my notes, it's trine Mars in Virgo as well.
Yes, it is. And yes, it is. And that Mars on the full moon will be at 13 degrees, and he's moving towards the south node in Virgo. The
Mm.
south node will be at 20 at the time of the full moon. And I noticed that on the 21st of July, Mars will make the exact conjunction to the south node. So, yeah, that's an interesting one. So, the full moon is actually trine Mars in the south node in Virgo.
Mm.
Capricorn, Virgo, Earth,
Yeah. Yeah.
work, getting on with business, taking care of what we need to take care of, sorting out the details, being productive.
Yeah. And I think Capricorn and Virgo, because they're earth signs, they have a real world perspective on things that other signs don't necessarily have.
Yeah,
They're more grounded in reality.
absolutely.
Mm.
Most definitely very grounded in reality. And so they just have a capacity then to just get on with things, roll up your sleeves and just get on with it and do what you have to do.
Definitely.
From the most mundane, to cleaning the dishes and cleaning up the kitchen to
Yeah.
accomplishing goals in your business or your career life, building the house, whatever it is, or running a country or whatever it is.
So Capricorn wants to get things done. And then you've got this precision-oriented Virgo in the
Yeah.
mix as well. So stuff happens basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Um, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and she was talking about cleaning things out and cleaning out files and old papers because she's going through a big life change and just this very strong urge to do that. So this, Mars in Virgo and the South Node's got a lot to do with the past. So
Mm,
I think it's a wonderful time to be clearing out old stuff. And, in a Capricorn moon opposite a Cancer sun can have a tendency to hold on to the past,
mm, mm.
you
Yes,
know.
true. Yeah. No, you said.
Those two signs are quite past oriented.
Yep. Yeah. Oh gosh, yes.
I love old things and history,
Or they just
but
have really good
all,
hands
what's
has
that?
really good memory.
Amazing memory. Oh, remember when? And everyone
Yeah.
else is going, no.
Elephant memory.
Amazing. And they like to, keep old photographs and mementos and things from their grandmother. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But all I'm suggesting is in this time of dissolution of the old as we move forward, a lot of things that we're attached to from the past just may need to go. Not necessarily everything.
Mm,
But I think this Mars in Virgo is very good for sifting and sorting, isn't it?
yes, and I think that Cancerian's sentimentality needs that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, do you really need this? Like, is it really important?
Remember, it's just as a crab clutching on,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, so that's actually very nice, that trine.
Mm,
Yeah, particularly because it's an earthy full moon, that trine to Mars in Virgo is very good actually, very helpful. Um, so so then after the full moon, well, during the full moon, Saturn's actually stationary, Saturn ruling Capricorn, ruling the Capricorn full
mm,
moon. So it does have quite a strong sort of Saturnian feel.
mm,
And on the 13th, he will begin to move retrograde, sitting at 1 degree 56 minutes of Aries, almost 2 degrees.
mm.
And then 5 days later, our little friend, our naughty, pesky little friend, apologies to Mercury, will turn retrograde at 15 degrees of Leo.
Mm,
So Mercury, the great messenger communicator, ruler of Gemini, going through the sign of Leo, will get to 15, stop, and retrograde back to 4 degrees over usually around 21 days, 3 weeks retrograde.
mhm,
So, that means that in July already, and at the end of the month, Chiron turns retrograde as well. So July has a lot of this stationary retrograde energy, planets coming to a standstill
mm,
and turning back. So it can be, we're coming into a period where we'll feel more introspective, more sort of slowing down. It's not a period now through July and in these coming months
mm,
to be pushing things forward. We're doing the reviewing, we're doing the recalibration, the reassessing, and the integration. Because when everything's forward in forward motion, we're just moving forward. We're not necessarily internally processing and digesting. When planets turn back, we get an opportunity to process things more
mm,
fully because we go back over them.
yeah. Yeah, I think so. It's a time to review our goals. And
Yeah.
especially with Saturn retrograde in Aries, our goals, our commitments, responsibilities, examine any weaknesses in our foundations is another one
Hmm.
I've marked.
Yeah.
On the world stage, there can be war and armed conflict. There's issues of identity there with Aries and sovereignty as well. I think it's that Saturn retrograde in Aries is a reality check time if we've been moving too fast because Aries is like, shoo,
Yeah.
and Saturn just slows us down and goes, wait a minute, wait,
Yeah.
let's go back and have another look at all this sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when Saturn moved into Aries, it was that feeling of let's go and let's go hard and let's push hard. And now it's, oh, well, actually, maybe I did rush into that a bit too quickly. And now I'm dealing with kind of the aftermath. And perhaps I need to go and reassess and look at that again.
So how do you see that Mercury retrograding into Leo? Because it's a sign of centrality, isn't it? It's like everything happens around it, like the king in the kingdom, that sort of thing. How does Mercury retrograde in Leo how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, well, Mercury at its most fundamental level is our thinking, how we think, and then how we communicate and find language to express. And Leo's very much about expression of self.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I and how do I express and communicate that?
Mm,
And how do I think about myself and what it is that I want to express in a creative way? It's a very, very creative, often talented sign. People with planets in Leo, they're expressing their natural innate talent
mm,
through the energy of that sign in some kind of creative form. And so Mercury retrograde here could be to do with how we're expressing who we are um, through words and language, how we're communicating that.
mm,
And because Leo needs to show up and be seen.
Mm.
And perhaps when Mercury's going you see, when it's going direct in Leo, it can be, I've got something to say,
Yes.
and it will announce it quite loudly even. When Mercury goes retrograde here, we might need to be reconsidering what it is we want to say, or hang on, I'm not sure that I feel the same about that anymore, or
Mm.
I said that in a way that was really a bit dominating, and now I'm getting a bit of flack and a bit of feedback and a bit of pushback.
Yeah.
Perhaps I do need to reassess how I communicate and express myself. So it could be things like that. Or it might be if someone's writing a book, use this as an analogy. They're just, because when Mercury's retrograde, we're turning more inward.
Mm,
And
yes.
it can be a really good time for study, for research, for, learning something. We might be learning something about ourselves. We might be researching something about our own identity, something about, like it might be for someone a period where they're just doing a lot of study about astrology and their own chart because they want to know more about themselves.
Mm. Mm.
Or they might have just gotten into numerology. And so it can be that sort of a thing, but it can also be the repercussions of how we speak and how we speak. Because, Mercury and Leo can sometimes talk over the top of other people because, after all, Leo is the boss, let's face it.
Yes. Yes. I know what you
The
mean.
boss, the leader. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course, there's always untypical Leos as well who want to hang out in the background too. But yeah,
Yeah. 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 There are sometimes shy Leos, and there are reasons for that you'll see
yeah,
in the
in the chat.
in the chart. And that might be Mercury retrograde in Leo too in someone's birth chart. That would need to be backed up by other things, perhaps a lot of planets in water and or the 12th house, something like that. But it could be someone who really wants to step forward and express themselves, but they're really shy. They speak really quietly and you have to say, pardon?
Mm.
Whereas normally Leo the lion will roar and, make its voice heard,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, or it could be someone's very creative and they haven't been finding time for that. And this might be a period where they start to actually make time for that creative expression in their life.
Mm.
You know? Um, I also feel because Uranus will have just gone into Gemini, the sign that's ruled by Mercury, and then Mercury turns retrograde. Um, I think that will also show up as some very interesting communications and announcements by world leaders and people on the world stage,
Yeah.
and
Sorry, I was going to say like it could even be royalty or celebrities or
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely, information might come to light,
Mm. Mm.
exactly about people like that for sure. Yeah, definitely. And, we need to consider what house we have Leo in our own chart. So the houses are, the area of life. So if Leo's in your 10th house of out in the world and your position out in the world, it will be more public. If it's in the 4th house, that Mercury will be retrograding in Leo more in your own private life, in your home, family life.
Mm.
So
Mm.
a lot of it depends on where that is.
Yeah.
Um, And on July the 21st, as I said, there's a Mars South Node conjunction. So that can be both quite stressful and can really create stress and anxiety and pressure and irritation because you might feel swamped by this. There's so much to do and not enough time to get it done.
Yeah.
But it can also be a very productive time if we're managing stress and anxiety. It can be super productive,
Good.
that this whole period, yeah. 22nd of July, Sun goes into Leo.
Mm.
And when Mercury's retrograde, it's always going to retrograde back and join with the Sun. So in every retrograde cycle of Mercury, which we have 3 to 4 times a year, there will be a moment in that cycle when we call it a cazimi, when it will actually be at the same degree as the sun, and that marks a new Mercury cycle. So that will be occurring. I didn't actually mark the date, but it will be no, I didn't, but it will be sometime in that second half of July that will occur. But so the sun will go into Leo, and of course, late July and into August is the Leo month.
Yeah.
Um,
So we want to shine when Leo's.
yeah,
I mean, the sun doesn't have to substantiate itself or feel it has to. It's just there and it's just being itself and it's just shining all over the place, you know. It's
exactly,
brilliant.
exactly. And the sun is the center of the solar system.
Mm,
As a spiritual teacher used to say things like, are you the star of your own movie? Like it was a question, like, be the star in your own movie.
yes,
And,
yes.
show up and fully be present in your own life as you. And I
Yeah.
think that's a real Leo invitation.
Yeah.
Um, and we all love, I know I do, those images, when you see those reels or videos of the pride of lions just, walking down a road in the bush, and there's the big proud lion, and they're just so magnificent and glorious. That's such a Leo statement.
Mm,
Be who you are.
yeah.
Um, and I think, going back to Mercury retrograde can be a period where we get to see and examine more closely the ways that we might hide our light. There might be an impulse to shine,
Mm,
and we can get to see more closely how we pull back and we go, no,
mm,
and we go quiet, or we don't show up in a way that we really want to. That might come up for people as well.
yeah.
Or it might be an urge to say something, but there's a little voice that goes, no, 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 don't say that.
Yeah.
That's going to expose you too much.
Yes. Mm,
Yeah. And then on the 25th of July, of course, coming to the end of the month, we have the new moon, of course, in the sign of Leo. And actually, if my memory on that new moon, I think I've got the chart here. Yes, so on the new moon, the new moon will be at 2 of Leo, Mercury will be at 13. So it still will have at least another week or so before it meets with the sun. But
mm,
that's going to be a really powerful new moon at 2 degrees of Leo because it makes an exact opposition to Pluto at 2 degrees of Aquarius.
yeah. Yeah.
It also connects with Uranus in Gemini and Neptune and Saturn in early Aries. So it's a very powerful new moon, that one.
Yes, we'll have a lot to unpack with that one. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Mm,
for sure.
yeah. A lot of Leo energy. It's funny how you are you're in your with your own astrology, you're more comfortable with certain signs than with other signs, you know. Leo is not always the sign that I feel comfortable with, even though I'm a Sagittarius fire sign, fellow fire sign.
Yeah,
The same with Aries. I don't always feel comfortable with Aries.
that's right. And sometimes that's because there is so even though, you're fire,
Mm,
the presence of Saturn on your sun
yes.
kind of, it's like you're almost an honorary Capricorn. Yes, you're a Sag with all those beautiful Sagittarian qualities, which I see a lot,
Yes.
but it's like you're a Sagittarius Capricorn
Yeah.
kind of, or
Yeah.
a Capricornian Sagittarian,
Yes. I know what you mean. Yeah.
and that does have a very important influence. And so the Aries and Leo can just feel like it's just all too much.
True. Very true.
It's like somebody having Pluto conjunct their sun in any sign.
Mm,
There might be there might be a Virgo, and back in the 60s Pluto was in Virgo, but they might have Pluto conjunct the sun in Virgo. So
mm,
they're a kind of a scorpionic Virgo.
mm, mm.
And that really is significant. It really does have that much influence.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I know what you mean. There are certain signs that we just naturally naturally enjoy and resonate with and are really at ease with,
Yeah.
and others that, well, we're just not quite so sure about. And it's not because there's anything wrong with the sign, it's just our own nature, our own energetic makeup
Yes,
responds in different
definitely.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very interesting, especially when you break it down to the elemental level too.
I know.
If you get a water sign with earth sign, it can turn into mud or
Yeah,
fire and water. It can turn into steam, those sorts of things.
it's true.
Mm,
You can see a lot about someone in with their chart just by looking at the balance of elements and how the elements.
mm,
And I always start there, with any new client, I start with let's have a look at that little graph that shows us the balance of elements,
yeah,
because that's like an encapsulation really of the energetic field of that person.
yeah,
Is fire dominant? Is there an element missing or very light on? Like I don't have much earth.
mm,
Um, and sometimes there won't be anything in one particular element
mm,
and a dominance in it. And sometimes they're quite evenly balanced. And that's always worth noting. It says a lot.
it does, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then to round off the month on the 31st of July, Chiron turns retrograde in Aries. So by the end of the month, and Pluto is already retrograde, by the end of the month, there will be 5 planets retrograde.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
It's been happening in the last few years, I've noticed. The second half of the year, there's a bunch of all the outer planets are pretty much retrograde. And then when you get fast moving Mercury come in for 3 weeks during that, he adds to that retrograde energy. So it can feel like things have slowed right down. I can feel myself like talking, where someone turns down the speed on the audio, it's like it slows.
Yes.
It does. And you feel like you're not getting anywhere
Mm,
because we're going deeper and we're processing. And then one by one, each planet, some months later, towards the end of the year, will start to move forward. And you feel a sense of, ah,
yeah.
and then eventually they're all forward and go, here we go.
Yes.
Now we've processed and integrated all of that. Now we're ready to move on again. It's
Yes.
like that.
We've been through that before in recent times too. Was it
We
last year
have.
or the year before? I can't remember now, but
Yeah, the last few years it's been like that actually. Like they've
mm,
all been retrograde kind of in that second half of the year.
mm,
Then usually kind of around November, December, they start going direct again.
yes, yeah. And thank goodness.
I know, I know. And then, of course, people who are born with quite a lot of planets retrograde, that to me is an indication that they're doing a lot of karmic clearing
Mm,
in this. They're working through a lot of old material to clear, um, unfinished business from the past. Yeah.
interesting. So when you say a lot, how many would you say you start?
4 and more.
Okay.
Most people are going to have 2, 3 planets retrograde in their chart. Sometimes 4 is, quite common.
Mm,
Um, but once you're getting up to, 5, 6, 7,
that's a
that
lot.
is a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to have some of those outer planets retrograde.
Mm,
Usually we'll have 2 or 3. Occasionally you will see a planet with a chart with no retrograde planets. You
mm,
won't see that often, actually.
mm.
Because, what I've noticed, particularly in recent years, there's a little window of maybe 2 months in the year where there's nothing retrograde. And sometimes there's only a matter of weeks when there's nothing retrograde.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We've talked about that before too. It's interesting, isn't it?
it really is.
It
Yeah.
really is a cosmic dance.
It's incredible. It's complex. There's so many moving parts to it, isn't there?
Just like in
Yeah.
old watches.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. The cogs.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. That's a lot to digest, actually. Um, there's
Yeah, it is.
there's a lot going on. And yes, I'll have to think about that a bit more.
And I think what's helpful, if for those who are interested, make a note of these dates
Mm.
that we've been talking about and just observe.
Yeah.
We learn so much astrology by the direct experience of observing and energetically responding to these changes as the planets are moving, and to sort of note what's happening
Yes.
in your own experience, but also around you, gives you a lot of insight and understanding.
July's certainly got a different feel to it as compared to June. June was just bonkers.
It was bonkers.
It was really bonkers, and it was just like, wow, this is happening, that's happening, something's happening there.
Yeah,
Something else is happening to someone else. Like my whole circle of influence is like things are happening, Oh,
I
it's
know, constant interruption and disruption, very chaotic. Yeah,
relentless. Yes, that was the word.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're very
Should
welcome. It's a
we
pleasure as always.
take a breath now? And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like it, leave your comments, and if you feel so moved, share it with your friends. And we will be back in another 2 weeks with the next lunar cycle. So until then, be happy and
Yes.
try not to let the chaos get to you.
Yeah.
And if it does, just take your shoes off and go for a walk in the park.
Very good advice. Absolutely.
Okay. So bye for now, everyone. Stay safe and be well.
Bye, everyone.